Welcome to Crushed Husband. Please like the video and subscribe. Let's begin. The phone rang at 8:13 p.m. on a Wednesday. I remember the exact time because I had just finished watching the evening news and was halfway through a crossword puzzle I never managed to complete. When I saw the name Andrew flash on the screen, I thought my eyes were playing tricks on me. Andrew, my son, the one who hadn't spoken to me in over 20 years. My name is Richard Evans. I'm 65 years old. I live alone in a small but well-furnished condo in Lexington, Kentucky. I've got a cat named Baxter, a nearly paid-off Cadillac, and more money than I know what to do with, none of which mattered when I saw that name. I let it ring once more before answering. "Hello?" I said, steady as I could. "Dad?" His voice sounded exactly the same, and nothing like I remembered. Older, deeper, but still with that polished charm Clara always praised him for. "It's Andrew. I hope I'm not catching you at a bad time." I stood up and walked to the kitchen, my hand gripping the receiver tighter than I meant to. "Not at all. It's been a while." He let out a low, practiced chuckle. Yeah, it really has. "Listen, I know this is out of the blue, but we're putting together a little New Year's Eve gathering. Family only. Thought it'd be good to reconnect. Would love for you to come." Family only. That phrase twisted in my chest. "That's unexpected," I said. "Why now?" "Well, life's short," he replied too quickly. "We've all grown. Figured it was time to bury the past, But I did know. I knew about the article in the Lexington Journal 2 months ago announcing the sale of my real estate holdings. I knew about the speculation of my net worth. I also knew this call hadn't come after I sent years of birthday cards, letters, even a couple of voicemails. This call came now because they thought they saw a wallet with legs. Still, I kept my tone light. "That's very thoughtful. I suppose I could be convinced to make an appearance." There was a pause. "Really? That's great. Clara will be happy to see you too. Tell her I said hello." "And Andrew?" I said, reaching for the bourbon on the counter. "I think I'll bring a little surprise with me." He hesitated. "A surprise?" I smiled into the phone. "Something long overdue." "Okay," he said, trying to sound upbeat. "We'll see you New Year's." When I hung up, I just stood there for a minute, letting the silence settle back in. Let them think I'm the same man they walked away from. They don't know what's coming. The night Clara walked out, she didn't cry. She didn't even raise her voice. She just stood in the doorway of our bedroom, suitcase in hand, and said, "I can't keep pretending you're the man I thought I married." That was over 20 years ago, and I still remember the smell of her perfume lingering in the air long after the front door shut. Lavender and something bitter underneath it, maybe resentment. I lost the house, the car, half my savings, and any illusion I had of fairness in divorce court. But none of that compared to the ache of watching Andrew, barely 17 at the time, walk past me without a glance and climb into Clara's new boyfriend's BMW like I was already dead. Frank, that smug bastard, owned a chain of car dealerships and knew how to dress like money. He was everything Clara thought I wasn't. Sharp, ambitious. "A man with a future," she once said, right to my face. "You'll never be more than a factory foreman," she told me during our final fight. "You don't dream. You wait for life to hand you scraps." I wanted to scream that I was trying, that working nights and weekends just to pay the mortgage was ambition in its own way. But she didn't want effort. She wanted flash. And Andrew, he ate it up. Frank took him to golf courses, handed him a Rolex on his 18th birthday, and suddenly, I wasn't Dad anymore. I was Rick. A guy he barely tolerated during court-ordered weekends. Once, during a parent-teacher meeting, Andrew told his counselor I was embarrassing, said I smelled like metal and failure. I laughed it off in the moment, but I drove home that night in silence, gripping the wheel so hard my knuckles ached. I stopped trying after that. Letters I sent came back unopened. Birthday cards were ignored. They'd picked their team. But standing in my kitchen now, hearing Andrew's voice on the phone after 2 decades, I didn't feel pain anymore. I felt cold resolve. Let them think I'm still that broken man they left behind. Let them think I'm just now crawling back to life. They're about to find out exactly who they walked away from. After the divorce, I had nothing. No house, no car, and barely enough pride to keep me from crumbling. I was 45, sleeping in a rented room above a pawn shop on Jefferson Street, working third shift at a paper factory where the machines were louder than the thoughts I tried to drown out. At night, I'd walk past this old brick warehouse 3 blocks down. It was boarded up, abandoned, covered in graffiti, and for some reason, I couldn't stop looking at it. Maybe because it looked how I felt. Forgotten. I checked the county records out of boredom. Turned out it had been in foreclosure for months. I scraped together every penny I had and made an offer so low it was almost insulting. To my shock, the bank accepted. The place was a mess. No plumbing, cracked foundation, leaky roof. But every night after my shift, I worked on it, alone, with a bad back and a socket wrench. I had no plan beyond fixing it. But when I finally listed the first floor as a commercial rental, a small logistics company signed a lease within 2 weeks. The rent paid the mortgage. The second tenant paid the utilities. The third gave me enough to buy another building. By 2008, while the housing market collapsed, I was buying properties other people were desperate to dump. I wasn't smarter than anyone else. I was just too poor to be scared. And by then, I knew how to do everything myself. Wiring, drywall, roofing. If it needed doing, I figured it out. Over the next decade, I built a portfolio of over 30 properties. Apartment complexes, commercial spaces, a couple of renovated homes, quietly, carefully. I never flashed it. Never bought a big house or a sports car. I drove a 10-year-old Ford pickup and wore jeans to every closing. Then, in 2017, I entered a national design competition on a whim, a mixed-use development blueprint I'd sketched out on my kitchen table. When I won, the prize money hit 7 digits. That was when the real estate magazines started calling, and my name finally showed up in the Lexington Business Journal. I didn't feel proud. I felt numb. Success didn't make the years of silence go away. It didn't undo the birthdays I spent alone or the holidays where I toasted no one. But it did give me something I'd never had before: control. People started looking at me differently. Neighbors, colleagues, even old acquaintances who once pitied me started using words like visionary. But the only person whose recognition I ever wanted, my son, never called. Until now. It wasn't ambition that got me here. It was loneliness. Every brick I laid, every lease I signed, every wall I patched was done to fill a space no one else cared to visit. They think I'm still the man they left behind. Let them. They have no idea the man I've become. The call came on a Sunday afternoon. Clara's number popped up like a ghost. One I hadn't heard from since dial-up internet was still a thing. I let it ring once, twice. Then I picked up. "Richard," she said, syrupy and warm. "It's been too long." I could almost hear the gears turning behind her voice. She didn't call to catch up. "It has," I said, keeping my tone flat. "What's the occasion?" She gave a light laugh, the kind she used to use at dinner parties. "Well, Andrew told me he invited you to the New Year's Eve gathering. I think it's wonderful. He's really been wanting to reconnect." "Has he?" I said. "That's funny. He never mentioned it in the last 20 years. A beat of silence. Then she shifted gears. "Richard, look, there's something I wanted to ask. It's not easy, but Andrew's business is in trouble, the landscaping company. There were some unexpected lawsuits, ridiculous things, really, and it's putting a lot of strain on him." There it was. "He could really use some support right now," she continued, "just to stabilize things. Maybe 400,000, just enough to get things back on track." I leaned against the counter, staring out the window at the frozen garden I'd planted myself years ago. "Andrew told you to call, didn't he?" "What?" "No, he doesn't even know I'm calling," she insisted too quickly. Then, faintly, I heard it, a low voice behind her, male, urgent. "Tell him it's for expansion, too. Say that." I let that sit for a second. "You know, Clara," I said, voice calm, "I spent the last 2 decades being ignored like I was dead. Not even a Christmas card. Now suddenly you and Andrew remember I exist, right after the Lexington Journal published my net worth." "That's not fair," she snapped. "You don't know what we've been through." "I know exactly what I've been through, and I know a cash grab when I hear one." She dropped the sweetness. "You'll regret this, Richard. You think that money makes you untouchable? You're still the same man we left behind." I smiled to myself. "No, Clara," I said quietly. "That man's gone, but thanks for reminding me why." And then I hung up. Let the games begin. 3 days after Clara's little pitch, I called Andrew. I made my voice tight and uncertain, like a man shaken to his core. "Andrew, listen. I need to tell you something before the party. Sure, what's up? He said, all warmth and fake charm. I took a slow breath. I made some bad calls recently, pulled out of real estate and put most of it into wind energy startups. One of them collapsed. I lost a lot. Silence. Like, how much is a lot? He asked cautiously. Most of it, I said. What's left won't even cover long-term care if I ever need it. I may need to sell the house. He didn't respond right away. I could hear him breathing through his nose, then a forced chuckle. Wow, Dad, that's rough, he said flatly. Yeah, I said. I figured you should know before the party. Might be a good chance to talk things through with the family. Start over, without any financial expectations. There it was, the bait. Well, about that, he said, the tone shifting. I was meaning to call you. Clara and I talked, and with everything going on, we might have to scale back the guest list. The party's going to be pretty intimate. Intimate, I repeated. Yeah, he said. Tighter, close friends, immediate family, that sort of thing. I nodded slowly, staring at the framed photo of a rental building I flipped in 2011. I understand. He sounded relieved. You're not upset? Not at all, I said. You've got to do what's best. We said our goodbyes. I hung up and sat in silence for a long minute. That was it. He didn't even try to hide it. The second the money dried up, so did the welcome. I felt something in me tighten, then settle. This wasn't about hurt anymore. It wasn't about being left out. It was about seeing them clearly. Finally. I poured myself a drink, opened my laptop, and began to type. Let's see what Andrew and Clara have been hiding. It was time to do some digging. The first clue came from a name I recognized, Gary Winston, a real estate guy I'd once done a deal with back in 2009. He casually mentioned that he'd been approached by Andrew's company for a landscaping contract on a commercial lot, but backed out when the numbers didn't add up. I asked him to forward me whatever paperwork he had. What I got was a proposal riddled with inflated projections and fake subcontractor quotes. That was just the start. With a few phone calls and a late-night visit to an old friend in the county assessor's office, I got access to public records. Andrew's business had expanded too fast. He'd borrowed against properties he didn't fully own, pulled in investor money with glossy brochures and fake endorsements, and was now sitting on a mountain of IOUs and pending lawsuits. Several investors were already circling, preparing for a civil suit. Quiet rumblings in business circles said Andrew's ecoscaping tech was just a buzzword. The man had dressed up sod and smart sprinklers and called it innovation. It was all a house of cards. But Clara, she had her own performance going. A search of her name led me to a fundraiser site where she'd posted a video. In it, she wore a headscarf, claimed to be battling stage 3 ovarian cancer, and tearfully asked for help covering her experimental treatment. The post had raised over $70,000 from strangers and sympathizers. And yet, no GoFundMe withdrawal disclosures, no clinic names. I called the hospital she claimed to be treated at. A polite woman in medical records confirmed what I suspected. We have no patient under that name receiving oncology treatment. I sat there for a moment, just staring at the wall. Andrew was swindling investors. Clara was stealing from the sick and kind-hearted. And both of them thought I was still that desperate man looking for a scrap of their approval. I printed everything. Screenshots, receipts, incorporation filings, lawsuit notices, and that fake fundraiser video. Slid it all into a thick folder. I wasn't angry anymore. Anger burns out. This was colder, cleaner. They had gambled on my silence, on my decency, on the idea that the past would keep me soft. But I wasn't soft anymore, and I wasn't going to stay quiet. I waited exactly 8 days before calling Andrew again. I made sure my tone was different this time. Lighter, hopeful. Good news, I said, feigning excitement. That wind energy loss wasn't as bad as I thought. Got most of it back through a buyout. Just a few scratches. There was a pause. Then his voice perked up like a dog hearing the treat bag crinkle. Really? Wow, that's amazing, Dad. I'm so glad. I've been thinking, I continued, about that New Year's gathering. If the invite's still open, I'd love to come. Oh, absolutely, he said quickly. Totally still open. We'd love to have you. That same evening, he called back. Said he had something exciting to run by me. Claimed it was a game changer. Dad, he said, slipping back into his pitchman voice, We're working on a revolutionary smart landscaping system, fully automated water cycling, app-controlled nutrient dispersal. We're raising capital. $300,000 would get you in at the ground floor. I played my part. Sounds impressive. Send me the details. He emailed a laughable PDF the next day. Stock photos, vague projections, no breakdown of costs. I told him I'd bring my checkbook to the party. Meanwhile, I met with 3 of his largest private investors, quiet, sharp men who had grown suspicious over the past year. When I showed them what I found, they didn't hesitate. Legal papers were drawn up, signatures collected. Next came Clara. I anonymously forwarded the hospital's response, her fundraiser screenshots, and withdrawal statements to 3 local news outlets. One of them confirmed an expose would run on New Year's Day. Then I visited a friend from my architecture days who now worked in PR. Send this to every contact you trust, I said, handing him a USB drive labeled Donations and Deception. By December 30th, I had court summons ready, a half-dozen news outlets alerted, and more than a dozen angry investors prepped to strike. My folder, now thick as a phone book, sat zipped in my suitcase. I looked at it one last time and smiled. Let them set the table. Let them pour the champagne. I'd bring the reckoning. Andrew's house sat on a hill like it had something to prove. Overly modern, wide glass panels, rented furniture, and a manicured driveway he couldn't afford to maintain. I parked near the gate and walked up, suitcase in hand. Inside, Clara greeted me with a long, awkward hug that smelled like perfume and desperation. "Richard," she said too brightly, "you look, well, healthy living," I replied, stepping past her. Andrew came down the stairs in a navy blazer 2 sizes too tight. "Dad, glad you made it," he said, voice dripping with false warmth. "Dinner's almost ready. We've got champagne chilling and dessert catered." The dining table was set for 8, though only 5 chairs were occupied. Andrew, Clara, a couple I didn't recognize, and me. Everyone smiled too hard, laughed too loud. I played along. We ate duck confit like it was a family ritual, even though I remembered Andrew gagging over meatloaf when he was 12. "So, Dad," Andrew said as plates were cleared, "about that investment we discussed." Clara jumped in, her hand brushing mine. "He's really on the edge of something huge. Just needs that last little push. And of course, I've been dealing with my health, but I'm staying strong." I raised an eyebrow. "Still getting treatments at St. Vincent's, right?" Her hand flinched back. "Yes, weekly." I took a slow sip of wine and set the glass down. That's when the doorbell rang. Andrew frowned. "Expecting someone?" "No," I said. He stood, confused. A minute later, the front door opened. A man in a black coat stepped into the dining room, holding an envelope. "Andrew Wallace?" the man asked. Andrew nodded. Yeah? You've been served." He handed over the papers and walked out. Andrew blinked at the documents, his mouth falling open as he skimmed the first page. "What the hell is this?" he said, voice rising. "Investor fraud?" Another knock. This time, Clara answered. I could hear the voice of the courier from the hallway. "Miss Clara Hayes?" "Yes," she said, wary. "You've been served, and Happy New Year." She stared at the papers in her hands like they were on fire. Right then, her phone buzzed, and buzzed again, then again. She looked down and went pale. I pulled out my chair and stood. "That'll be the news alerts," I said. "Local outlets, national syndicates by morning, all that money you raised for fake treatments, you'll be trending by midnight." Andrew looked up at me, jaw slack. "You did this?" "No," I said, reaching for my coat. "You did. I just opened the door." I walked out without another word, the sweet sound of unraveling lies echoing behind me. The fallout came faster than even I expected. By the first Monday of the year, Andrew's name was plastered across business blogs and local news tickers. Green tech landscaping implodes amid investor lawsuits, fraud claims mount. Investors who had once bragged about being on the ground floor were now suing for breach of contract, misrepresentation, and wire fraud. Clara didn't fare much better. The expose hit the morning after the party. Her face, sickly pale and scarf-wrapped in her fundraiser video, was juxtaposed against hospital statements confirming she'd never received cancer treatment. The article didn't pull punches. Words like deceiver, con artist, and charity fraud followed her name like shadows. By the end of the week, Andrew had shut down his office. His website disappeared. His lawyer withdrew. Clara was banned from multiple fundraising platforms. People who'd once praised her bravery online were now tagging authorities in furious comments. They both tried to reach me. Andrew sent a text, "Can we talk?" Then another, "You really had to humiliate us?" I didn't reply. Clara left a voicemail. "We made mistakes, Richard, but no one deserves to be crucified like this. You're not better than us." I deleted it without listening to the rest. Their silence used to hurt. Their rejection used to burn. Now, watching them spin in the mess they built, I felt something I hadn't in decades: peace. I went for walks without checking my phone, ate meals without sitting across from ghosts. I even sat by the lake near my old apartment, the one I rented after Clara left, and watched ducks skim across the surface while I sipped my coffee. Let them beg. Let them sell the car, the house, the designer clothes. Let them stare into a mirror and finally meet the versions of themselves I've known all along. They once called me a failure, a man without ambition, a footnote in their lives. Now they were footnotes in mine. I didn't need revenge. I didn't want apologies. I wanted freedom, and I had it. It was early spring when I finally packed the last box. 3 months had passed since the New Year's dinner, and I hadn't heard a word from Clara or Andrew since mid-January. That's when the last text came through. From Andrew. A voice memo, actually. He sounded hollow, like someone playing the victim in a play nobody was watching. "Dad, I don't even know where to start. I messed up, I know, but I'm still your son. If there's any way you could help me get through this." I hit delete. I didn't feel guilt. I didn't feel anger. I felt done. The house I'd lived in for the past decade, quiet, comfortable, too big for one man, was sold. The proceeds went into a modest trust fund earmarked for charitable causes. I kept a portion for myself, just enough to live simply, freely. I'd found a small town 2 hours south of Lexington. Population under 10,000. They needed volunteers at the food bank, help with the senior outreach program, and someone to fix a leaky roof on the old library. I told them I could do all three. Baxter the cat took the passenger seat as I drove away from my old life. I didn't leave a forwarding address. No need. Along the highway, I rolled the windows down. The breeze was cool, clean. I thought of Clara in some rented apartment, probably still spinning stories. Of Andrew, maybe sleeping on a friend's couch, scrambling to stay out of court. They used to see me as a burden, a ghost, a man with calloused hands and nothing to offer. Turns out, I was their reckoning. I didn't need their love. I didn't need their praise. I just needed to stop pretending they ever meant to give it in the first place. At a rest stop, I pulled out my phone and opened my voicemail. There was one new message, Andrew again. His voice cracked near the end, somewhere between apology and desperation. I pressed delete, and that was that. Back on the road, I turned up the radio. Nothing fancy, just old country songs and static between towns. The sun dipped low behind the hills, painting everything gold. I didn't know exactly where I was going, but for the first time in my life, I didn't care. I was finally free, and that was more than enough.